the second caliph, the second khalifa, whereby the Messenger ﷺ لقبه بالفاروق. أول من لقبه به النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لقبه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بإيش؟ بالفاروق. Because Faruq means to separate or to distinguish, because Umar radiallahu anhu used to separate between the haqq and the batil, the truth and the falsehood, and he would clarify the truth from the falsehood. He was known to be strong and firm, but at the same time gentle, strong and firm in upholding the truth. Radiyallahu anhu. Umar Ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu, in his lifetime, mashallah, tabarakallah, no doubt he established justice, and he sent many companions to various parts of the world, and he would also ask about the affairs of the people in those cities or in those countries. And that you will find it at the beginning of the narration, which we're going to read, the narration in Sahih Bukhari, as I said. We would ask about the companions, we would ask about the people, we would ask about the poor, the needy in those areas. And I'm going to, when we mention the beginning of that story, which is narrated by Amr ibn Maymun, he says, I saw Umar ibn Khattab a few days before he was stabbed in al-Madinah. He was standing with Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman. And you know Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman radiallahu anhu, sirr of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would confine with Hudayfa to tell him about the hypocrites of Medina. And Umar radiallahu anhu had other companions, elders around him. He loved the companions, he loved them to be close. And Uthman ibn Hanif also, who both said, whom Umar said to them, what have you done? Do you think that you have imposed more taxation on the land of Iraq? So here Umar is concerned that maybe the people have been taxed more than they can bear in the land of Iraq. So he asked about the situation. They replied, we have imposed on it what it can bear because of its great yield. Umar again said, check whether you have imposed on the land what it cannot bear. Because he wanted to deal with justice, and he wanted to deal with that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded. As Allah commanded with al-qist, with al-adl. قُلْ أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِالْقِسْطِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ. Indeed, Allah commands with justice and righteousness. And so Umar wanted to deal with justice likewise. Even upon those who are enemies, he would be just, and he would be upright, and he would be following the sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu salam. And this is clearly shown in how he dealt with the dhimmis, or those who were mu'ahadeen, had a contract between the Muslims of Medina and those who came into Medina. From those who came into Medina to serve the people of Medina because of their ability, skill that they had. And Umar was concerned that also they are being dealt with justly. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم. Allah does not forbid you from being just and righteous towards those who don't drive you out of your houses and don't fight you in your deen, concerning your deen, that you be just to them and you shall bear to them. And also he knew the hadith of the Messenger ﷺ about harming the mu'ahad, the ones who have a contract between the Muslims and they come as non-Muslims to serve or to work amongst the Muslims. What did he say? The Messenger ﷺ said, "Man qatala mu'ahadan lam yarih ra'ihat al-jannah." Whoever kills a mu'ahad, a person who has that contract between them and the Muslims, whoever kills them, they will not smell the fragrance of paradise. So Umar was well aware of these narrations. And he was just, not just to the Muslims, but also to the non-Muslims. And this is well documented and shown as well in the last part of this hadith. Because the one who killed him was not a Muslim. And he actually resided in Medina. Abū Lu'lu'ah al-Du'ali. He resided in Medina and he was allowed to stay to bring his skill. He was a craftsman. For he was one that had skill. And the people benefited from that skill. And so when Abū Lu'lu'ah came to Umar radiallahu anhu, and prior to killing Umar radiallahu anhu, he said that I only get, and he complained, he said I only get, from the one that he's working for, he said I only get 100 dirhams a month. And Umar radiallahu anhu asked, what is your skill? What is it that you do? And he said, I make things, and he mentioned various things that he makes and he does. And Umar radiallahu anhu said, it seems like a fair wage for somebody with this skill. And Abū Lu'lu'ah became angry and was upset. And then he went away and he wanted to take vengeance against Umar Ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. So that's the background to the hadith. Also, the Messenger ﷺ said about Umar radiallahu anhu that when he takes one path, the shaitan takes another path. And this is actually explained by different scholars. What does it actually mean? Not that shaitan does not run through Ibn Adam Majra Dam. No, shaitan still runs through Ibn Adam Majra Dam, as the Messenger ﷺ mentioned. So if you go back to, for example, the explanation of Sahih Muslim, which also brings the story of Umar radiallahu anhu, there's various scholars that speak about that narration, that when Umar radiallahu anhu takes one way, shaitan takes another way. Not that shaitan does not go through Ibn Adam Majra Dam. No, he goes through Ibn Adam through the veins. But Umar, because of his strength in adhering to the sunnah of the Messenger ﷺ, the shayateen are scared of him. The shayateen, they still whisper, but they are scared. They are scared of his presence because he was a man of sunnah. The Messenger ﷺ, he said, when Umar became Muslim, Allahumma a'izz al-Islam bi Abi Jahl ibn Hisham aw Umar ibn Khattab. فأصبح عمر فغدا على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نعم فأسلم. The Prophet ﷺ, he supplicated, he said, oh Allah, honor us, or honor Islam with the Islam of Jahl ibn Hisham, or Abu Jahl ibn Hisham, or with the Islam of Umar ibn Khattab. And Allah willed that Umar ibn Khattab was guided. Allah willed that. He was the one who came under the dua of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. And it also narrated, when he came to the Prophet ﷺ, he came to the masjid where the Prophet ﷺ was praying. The Prophet ﷺ started to read Surah Al-Haqqah. Now Umar is listening to Surah Al-Haqqah. فَجَعَلْتُ أَتَعَجَّبُ مِنْ تَأْلِيفِ الْقُرْآنِ. He said, I was amazed by this Qur'an. As he's listening to the verses, he says, Wallahi hada sha'ir. This one who's reciting, the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, indeed is a poet. Beautiful recitation, beautiful meanings, not like any other words that he's heard before. Just as the Quraysh said that he's a poet, he said, Wallahi hada sha'ir. And if he ظاهر, they thought that he thought he was a sha'ir. And then whilst the Prophet is reading Surah Al-Haqqah, he came to the verse, إِنَّهُ لَقَوْلُ رَسُولٍ كَرِيمٍ وَمَا هُوَ بِقَوْلِ شَاعِرٍ قَلِيلًا مَا تُؤْمِنُونَ. It is not the speech of a poet. Little do you believe. Then he said he must be a kahin, a soothsayer. And Allah and the Messenger ﷺ read the next verses. وَلَا بِقَوْلِ كَاهِنٍ. Nor is he a soothsayer. قَلِيلًا مَا تَذَكَّرُونَ. Little are you reminded. حَتَّى ختم السورة. Until the Messenger ﷺ completed the surah. And Umar radiallahu anhu said, فَوَقَعَ الْإِسْلَامِ فِي قَلْبِي كُلَّ مَوْقِعٍ. Islam came into my heart, in every part of my heart. So he accepted al-Islam. And there's other narrations that say which is actually the one that is authentic. This one is mentioned by Sheikh Muhammad Adam rahimahullah, in his explanation of Sahih Muslim. Now, ala kullin, Umar radiallahu anhu became Muslim, and alhamdulillah, the Muslims were strengthened with his Islam, alhamdulillah. And if we look at the story, the beginning of the story, which is in Sahih Bukhari, look at Umar radiallahu anhu's justice that he wanted to make sure the poor people. Why did they impose tax on the people of Iraq? Why? Because they wanted to look after the poor. Look what he said afterwards. He says, check whether you have imposed on the land what they cannot bear. They said, min Hudayfa radiallahu anhu and Uthman ibn Hanif, they said, no, we haven't. Umar added, if Allah should keep me alive, I will let the widows of Iraq need no men to support them after me. Again, this shows you his justice, wanting to look after the widows. And indeed, the Messenger ﷺ said, the one who looks after the widow, he is mujahid fi sabilillah. He is in the path of Allah because he's looking after the needy. So look at your communities, my dear brothers and sisters. Don't be neglectful of your people, of the community, those who are needy. Look what Khadija radiallahu anha said about the Messenger ﷺ. Allah will not leave you, for you take care of the poor, the miskeen and the faqir, and you also help the one that is being left, the abandoned one, the ma'doom. And likewise you keep the ties of kinship, and likewise you take care of your guests. These are the 4 things that Khadija radiallahu anha said about the Messenger ﷺ. And then she said, Allah will not leave you. So if you do not want Allah to leave you, my dear brothers and sisters, uphold that which the Messenger ﷺ upholds in justice. Uphold that which the Sahaba upheld in wishing for their brothers what they wish for themselves. Look in the society and look at your dealings with each other. Look at your marriages and look at your interaction with your families and children. If we are just, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not leave us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will aid us. Wallahu fi awni al-'abd ma kana al-'abdu fi awni akhihi. Allah will continue to help his servant so long as his servant helps his brother. Imagine you help your brother, Allah will help you. Don't be selfish. Don't be me, myself, and I. That is the way of hawa. Like they push at you in the land of disbelievers. It's all about yourself, they say. It's all about you. It's all about, and then you start thinking it. And even the one who may go out and study and come back, he's still got some of that disease. If he's not upon taqwa, if he's not upon humility, knowledge, if it benefits you, knowledge makes you better Muslim, makes you pious. But if knowledge makes you arrogant, then it's against you. Knowledge is not that which you gain to narrate much. That is not knowledge. Knowledge is fear of Allah. Knowledge is ittaqillah haythuma kunt. Wa atbi'i as-sayyi'ata al-hasanata tamhuha wa khaliq an-nas bi khuluqin hasan. Knowledge is fearing Allah wherever you are, in front of the people and in front of others. Knowledge is, as the Messenger ﷺ said, following up a bad deed with a good deed, that you may blot it out. And knowledge is mixing with the people with good actions, with good manners. Knowledge is not arrogance. Knowledge is not towering above the people, thinking you're better than them. As Iblis said, أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُ خَلَقْتَنِي مِنْ نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِنْ طِينٍ. Knowledge is not you look down upon your brother and you تحقره. كَفَى بِالْمَرْءِ إِثْمًا أَنْ يَحْقِرَ أَخَاهُ الْمُسْلِمِ. It is enough sin for a person that he belittles his brother, his Muslim brother. It's enough sin. يعني تحقر أخاك, or your brother or your sister, you look down upon them thinking you're better, thinking you're more pious, thinking you've made it. None of us have made it. It's not over until it's over. We still have to pass the punishment of the grave. We still have to be raised up as Muslims in the akhirah. We still have to get the book in our right hand. And we still have to be weighed. And our scrolls have to be weighed. And our deeds have to be weighed. And we still have to go over the sirat, which is finer than a hair and sharper than a sword. We still have to go through the sirat and not be grabbed by the kalalib, the hooks which will grab the people and for them to be thrown into the fire. We still have to get to the other side safely. We still have to enter Jannah. We still have to be free from the hellfire, many far and further away. We still have to be checking ourselves every day. Ikhlas, ittiba'. Look at the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. Look at Umar. Take this as an example. He's concerned about the widows of Iraq and the poor of Iraq and the needy of Iraq, that they will get their haqq. He says, if Allah should keep me alive, I will let the widows of Iraq need no man to support them after me, wanting to look after them, make sure that they have their haqq. Because who's going to look after the needy? But only 4 days had elapsed when he was stabbed to death. Where was he? He was in the masjid, ya Abdullah, Salat al-Fajr. And he was praying with the Muslims. And Allah said, وَارْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ, and bow with those who bow. Not on your own. He said, bow those who bow. The day he was stabbed, I was standing. And there was nobody between me and him except Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. This is Amr ibn Maymun mentioning this. Whenever Umar radiallahu anhu passed by, or between the two rows, he would say, stand in straight lines. He would say, stand in straight lines. And this is because Allah does not look at a line that is not straight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would command us, staw wa tarasu, straighten the rows. And the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as well, when he saw somebody was standing out, he poked him and he made sure he's straight. Straighten your rows, or Allah will separate between your hearts. You may think this small action, straightening the rows, but it's big in the sight of Allah. Or Allah will separate your hearts. Another narration, your faces. Subhanallah. Those who belittle the sunnah, they don't know the value of sunnah and the consequence of living the sunnah. My ummah will cease to be uppermost if they delay the breaking of the fast. They delay the breaking of the fast. My ummah will cease to be uppermost. Look. And also they precede the suhoor. Suhoor should be done towards the end. 50 verses, about 50 verses between Fajr and the beginning of suhoor. Last part of the night you're doing the suhoor, the sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. So leaving that, the ummah will cease to be uppermost. You see how great the sunnah is, and how great the consequences of those who do not practice the sunnah. Do not live by the Quran and the Aḥādīth sahiha, the authentic hadith of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. So the Messenger would go past. Even the Messenger, Umar would go past. And even the Messenger would go past. And he would say, close the gaps. Don't let shaitan enter between you. لا تجعلوا فرجة للشيطان. Don't leave a shaitan to go in between you. Standing in rows. And likewise, the Messenger ﷺ, as is narrated by Nu'man ibn Bashir and Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhuma, they said that we saw each and every one of us used to join their shoulders with their shoulders and their heels with their heels. Yani in the prayer. Rasulullah ﷺ, Allah blessed him not just with the Quran, which is the greatest sign, but there were other signs. From the signs of Rasulullah ﷺ, he was able to look behind his back. He was able to look behind his back to see the rows, for example. And that is, inshaAllah, showing you his acceptance of how the Sahaba prayed. And the narration of Anas radiallahu anhu and Nu'man Ibn Bashir radiallahu anhu is in Bukhari. Is in Sahih al-Bukhari. So he would straighten the rows. When he saw no defect in the rows, he would go forward and start the salah with takbir. He would recite Surah Yusuf or Surah Al-Nahl, or the like in the first rak'ah, so that the people may have time to join the salah. This is from the fiqh of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. From the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would recite, for example, in Dhuhr, 30 verses in the first two rak'ahs. And likewise, it's reported that even from his sunnah as well, is to recite even in the third and the fourth rak'ah of Dhuhr, with that which is half. So the Messenger ﷺ, generally, you'll find in his prayer, he will prolong the first rak'ah, so that the people can join. And this is rahmah for the people. As soon as he said the takbir, Umar anhu, he said the takbir, he said, the dog has killed me or eaten me. At that time, he's referring to the murderer, that he has stabbed him, who was Abū Lu'lu'ah al-Majūsī, a Magian, a fire worshipper, a disbeliever, who carried a double-edged knife. And he stabbed as well, not only the Umar radiallahu anhu, but also those in the front rows, to the right and to the left, until one of the companions threw a cloak over him and he found himself trapped and he ended up killing himself. After what? After stabbing 13 people, of whom 7 had died, radiallahu anhum. When one of the Muslims saw that, as we said, he threw a cloak on him, realizing that he had been captured, he killed himself. Umar radiallahu anhu held the hand of Abdurrahman ibn Auf. So imagine now, he's being killed, he's being stabbed, and injured. And he knows that this is a serious attack on him. What's his concern? His concern is the salah. He takes the hand of Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiallahu anhu, and he led him, he said, complete the prayer. Because the people behind him are saying, Subhanallah, Subhanallah. They don't know what's happening. And so Umar takes the hand of Abdurrahman ibn Auf and he says, to lead him to lead the prayer. Those who were standing by the side of Umar saw what I saw. But the people who were in the other parts of the mosque did not see anything. But they lost the voice of Umar radiallahu anhu. And they were saying, Subhanallah, Subhanallah. Abdurrahman ibn Auf. Remember, Abdurrahman ibn Auf is from the Sabiqun al-Awwalun. He's from the early Muslims, from the Sahaba who migrated from Mecca to Medina. And he shows you as well, is the best of the people that were with Umar radiallahu anhu. And is the best of the people that he himself led. Just like the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who did he say to lead the prayer in his lifetime? Towards the end of his life, he said, Muru Abu Bakr yusalli bin nas. Tell Abu Bakr to lead the prayer. So the salah was something great that the best of the people would lead. Aqra'uhum does not necessarily mean the ones who memorize the most. There were reciters, there were people who had memorized the Quran, much more. But aqra'uhum here, as some of the scholars say, like Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, aqra'uhum bima'na afqahum, the best of them in understanding. The Prophet ﷺ, he put forward Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to lead all the Muslims during the end of the Prophet ﷺ's lifetime, when he was not able to get up. And even in that narration, it mentions the Prophet ﷺ tried to get up for the salah. He tried again to get up for the salah. And there were times as well, as in narration in Sunan Ibn Majah, there were times he was between two companions. From them is Ali radiallahu anhu. And yuhada bayna al-nas, يعني ila salah, bayna rajulayn asif, ila salah. يعني he's taken, or yuhda, he's taken to the prayer with the two companions while his feet is just dragging. That is how the Messenger loved the salah. And he said, and you will see the similarities between what Umar said towards the end of his life and what the Prophet said towards the end of his life. Rasulullah is on his deathbed and he's saying, As-salah, as-salah, wa ma malakat aymanukum. The prayer, and those under your responsibility. That's from the last statements. The prayer, rights of Allah. Those under your responsibility, the rights of the people. With these two, there's salvation, ya Abdullah. Umar, what does he say towards the end of his life, on his deathbed? La khayra fi islami man taraka as-salah. There's no good upon a person's Islam, for a person's Islam, if he discards the prayer. So the first thing is, he pulls Abdurrahman ibn Auf to lead the prayer. When they finished the salah, Umar said, O Ibn Abbas, find out who attacked me. Ibn Abbas looked on, and he kept on looking here and there for a short time, and came to say, the servant of Mughira ibn Shu'bah. On that Umar said, the craftsman. Ibn Abbas replied, yes. Umar said, may Allah curse him. I did not treat him unjustly. And all praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has not caused me to die at the hand of a man who claims himself to be a Muslim. Then Umar was carried to his house. And we went along with him. And the people were as if they had never suffered any calamity before that day. Some said, do not worry, he will be all right. Some said, we are afraid that he will die. Then an infusion of dates was brought to him and he drank it, but it came out of the wound from his belly. Then milk was brought to him and he drank it, and it also came out from his belly. So you can see he's been injured with a deep injury. And so even whatever he drinks comes out from his stomach. And the people realized that he would die. And remember, Umar was the door. He kept a lot of harm away. And also there's narrations which mentions that he actually supplicated to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that indeed is that the affairs have become overwhelming. Because Islam had spread far and wide, and he had to deal with people. He had to deal with the people with justice. And he had to uphold justice. And that's not easy. But yet he was patient, and yet he supplicated to Allah that if it is that death is better, then that at least I die in Medina. That's one of his supplications, that I die at least in Medina and I die in a martyr. And some of the scholars say that dua was accepted, that he died in Medina because he wanted that shafa'ah with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the intercession of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and to die a martyr. The people realized that he would die. We went to him and the people came praising him. A young man came saying, "O chief of the believers." And he started to mention some good words, praising him. ببشرى. He says, "يا أمير المؤمنين بشرك الله أو ببشرى الله لك من صحبة رسول صلى الله عليه وسلم." Glad tidings to you that you were companions of the Messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم. وقدم في الإسلام, and you have a lot of virtues in Islam. ما قد علمت, such that which you know. ثم وليت فعدلت, then you also were given governance, the khilafah would be in caliph. فعدلت, and you were just in your dealing. ثم شهادة, then you are coming to be a martyr. So glad tidings to you, O Amir al-Mu'mineen. So Umar Ibn Khattab, what is his reply? He said, وَدِدْتُ أَنَّ ذَلِكَ كِفَافٌ لَا عَلَيَّ وَلَا لِي. He says, I wish that there will be counterbalance over the privileges and my shortcomings, so that I will neither lose nor gain anything. Meaning whatever that I have received, then it is counterbalanced, fearing the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also it shows shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shukr that whatever I done, it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not from me. فَلَمَّا أَدْبَرَ إِذَا إِزَارُهُ يَمُسُّ الْأَرْضِ. And when this young man left, Umar saw that his lower garments were touching the ground and dragging on the ground. قَالَ رُدُّ عَلَيَّ الْغُلَامِ. Let that boy come back to me. Tell them, let him come back, that youth. قَالَ ابْنَ أَخِي. He said to him, ارفع ثوبك, raise your garment, your lower garment. فإنه أنقى لثوبك, because it will be more clean for your lower garment. وأتقى لربك, and more pious towards your Lord. So raise your garment above your ankles. And this is what the Rasul said. Rasul said, ما أسفل ما بكعبين ففي النار. Whatever's below the ankle is in the fire. So the people of Sunnah, alhamdulillah, they raise their lower garments, the men, raise their lower garments above the ankles. They don't fear the people laughing and mocking and joking. Let them say what they like. When it comes into fashion, the people do it. We're not following fashion. We're following the Quran and the Sunnah. We're following the Haqq. We're following Sirat al-Mustaqim. أَفَمَنْ يَمْشِي مُكِبًّا عَلَى وَجْهِهِ أَهْدَى أَمَّنْ يَمْشِي سَوِيًّا عَلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. Is the one who is toppled over his face. As he walks, he's toppling over his face. Is he more guided, or the one who's going upon Sirat al-Mustaqim? So don't worry what people say. Not in this matter or in any matter. You are a Muslim. Be firm and be upright. Let the people say what they say. Let the mockers mock. You continue your da'wah to Tawheed and Sunnah. You establish the da'wah upon the ground. Let the people laugh and joke and mock and lie and cheat. But you be sincere and Allah will bless you in your da'wah. You continue to call to Allah and be just in your dealings with your family members. Be merciful to your wife and your children and your family members, keeping the ties of kinship, advising one another for Allah's sake. That is what is our concern, first and foremost, to get to Jannah, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to please the people. وَخْفِضْ جَنَاحَكَ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Lower your wings to the believers. Don't be high above like the arrogant one. Lower down, be merciful. Come down to earth. That's where we're going in the end. مِنْهَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ وَفِيهَا نُعِيدُكُمْ وَمِنْهَا نُخْرِجُكُمْ تَارَةً أُخْرَى. From it we created you, and to it you shall return, and from it you shall be raised up again. كيف تكفرون بالله وكنتم أمواتا فأحياكم ثم يميتكم ثم يحييكم ثم إليه ترجعون. How could one disbelieve or be ungrateful and disbelieve in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He was without life, and Allah gave us life, and then He shall cause us to die, and to Him will be the return. So how can we turn away? There's no turning back. There's one path, and there's one straight path to the Sirat al-Mustaqim. As Umar radiallahu anhu, even on his deathbed, he said him, raise your garment. Some people say, this is just small. No, it's not small. ما أسفل ما بكعبين ففي النار. Whatever's below the ankles in the fire, and pride is not even mentioned in that narration. And if one does it out of pride, it's worse. And then some people, they say, but Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, one of his sides of his lower garment was going below his ankle. Exactly one of his sides. It fell because he was trying to keep it up, and it fell. And they came to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam scared. Oh, Messenger of Allah, one of my sides of my lower garment goes below the ankle, fearing that he will be under that punishment. So what did the Prophet say? You're not the one who does it out of pride. Why? Because you're trying not to do it. You can't use that to say, khalas, drag your trousers below your ankle. No, you can't. He tried not to do it. And he tried to tie it. And one side, you try and justify two. One side that has slightly dropped. That's Allah salama. So the deen of Allah is beautiful. It's not about pleasing the people. It's about pleasing Allah. Let the people say what they say. وَإِذَا مَرُّوا بِهِمْ يَتَغَامَزُونَ إِذَا انقَلَبُوا إِلَى أَهْلِهِمْ انقَلَبُوا فَكِهِينَ وَإِذَا رَأَوْهُمْ قَالُوا إِنَّ هَؤُلَاءِ لَضَالُّونَ وَمَا أُرْسِلُوا عَلَيْهِمْ حَافِظِينَ فَالْيَوْمَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنَ الْكُفَّارِ يَضْحَكُونَ عَلَى الْأَرَائِكِ يَنظُرُونَ هَلْ ثُوِّبَ الْكُفَّارُ مَا كَانُوا يَفْعَلُونَ. Did it benefit them, the disbelievers? Did it benefit them? Did it benefit them winking and mocking and joking and looking down at the believers? It didn't benefit them. That's why we have to go back to the way of Sahaba radiallahu anhu. Look at Umar radiallahu anhu. He's concerned on his deathbed about the Salah. He's concerned about the Sunnah. He's concerned about being saved from the hellfire. Oh, young man, come back. Raise your trousers above your ankle. Raise your thobe, your lower garment above your ankle. Because why? It's cleaner for your garment and also more pious towards your Lord. Ya Abdullah ibn Umar, انظر ماذا علي من الدين. Third thing, he says to Abdullah ibn Umar, his own son, look to what I have of debts. Look to what I have. In order what? In order to cover my debts. In order to fulfill. Look to what I have. Naam. And pay those debts. And they said it was approximately 86,000. And so Umar radiallahu anhu commanded Abdullah ibn Umar, his own son, to go and cover to make sure the money he has, the wealth he has left, that he covers his debts. And this is important, to not die upon debt. Or at least we hope that we don't die upon debts. Na'am. That we fulfill that which is upon us, and all those who have rights upon us. And that's why we all should have a will. And we should all write down, tell our family members, what is it that I owe? Don't die that you have a debt. Prophet ﷺ, no doubt, when he found out there was a companion or somebody that, Allah knows best, he found out there was somebody that didn't pay his debt and he didn't want to pray over him. This shows you the seriousness, dying with that. So those who have debt, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy. And there's a dua that you can say. Naam. نعوذ بالله من غلبة الرجال وغلبة الدين. We seek refuge from being overcome by men and being overcome by debt. So this was Umar radiallahu anhu's concern on his deathbed. And it was said to him, Naam. Or he said to Abdullah ibn Umar, the fourth advice, he said to him, Abdullah ibn Umar, his own son, Naam, go to Aisha radiallahu anha, al-Mu'mineen, and say to her, Umar gives you salam. And don't say to her, Amir al-Mu'mineen gives you salam, the leader of the believers gives you salam. فَإِنِّي لَسْتُ الْيَوْمَ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَمِيرًا, because I'm no longer today Amir al-Mu'mineen. And say to her, يَسْتَأْدِنُكَ Umar. Umar gives or seeks permission that he be buried next to his two beloved companions, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And from the virtues is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Ali radiallahu anhu said this. He comes up to Umar radiallahu anhu while he's on his deathbed, just before he dies. Ali radiallahu anhu says, and he mentions, you are more virtuous than us, and how I would love to be like what you are upon. How great. Whenever the Messenger's husband is going someplace, you are going with him. Whenever he's going in a place, you and Abu Bakr are going with him. Meaning you're always with him. And you're always with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, along with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It shows you the love and the respect that Ali radiallahu anhu had for Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. And even before that, Ali radiallahu anhu married his own daughter to Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. So we say that to the Rafida Shia, that those who criticize the Sahaba radiallahu anhu, the Sahaba had love for each other. Who are you? Your anger and your rancor against the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, that comes back to you. That goes back to you because the Sahaba loved each other for Allah's sake. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu was known to be the best of the companions. When Umar ibn Khattab was praised and said, you were the best of us, and Abdurrahman ibn Auf said, no, there was better than Umar. And that was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq in the presence of Umar radiallahu anhu. And Umar radiallahu anhu said, Wallahi, he spoke the truth. When Abu Bakr as-Siddiq as a Muslim, when he was the best of the people, he was the first to become Muslim from the men, I was just looking after camels as a herder. Look, because that's before he became Muslim. He said, and look how he belittled himself, and look how he praised Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And that shows you that the Sahaba, they were not arrogant. They didn't look at themselves as, yes, I'm the man, I'm the one you should turn to. They weren't like that. It's about humility, ya Abdullah. It's about sincerity. Fifthly, we have the daughter of, so the fourth one was he asked to be buried next to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. And Aisha radiallahu anha said, I wish that place to be for me. But since it was Umar and since what happened to him, she said, I give that to Umar radiallahu anhu for him to, she accepted, she agreed. And she gave permission for him to be buried next to his two beloved companions. And notice, the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he died at 63 years old. Alayhi salatu wasalam. And before he passed away, he slaughtered 63 camels in Hajj. One for every year of his life. And some of the scholars mention, if you go to Alamatu Sindi, rahimahullah, he's got a book where he mentions some of the virtues of the companions. And in there he mentions about, it is possible that he slaughtered a camel for each year of his life to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he did that on the day of Eid, and he finished the actions on the day of Eid, which are 4 actions: Ranhat, Rami, Nahar, Halq, Tawaf, and Sa'i, Tawaf al-Ifada and Sa'i. And all that with 63 camels being slaughtered, all that before Dhuhr. If you finish before Maghrib is a blessing. If you finish before Isha is a blessing. But he did all of that, alayhi salatu salam, before Dhuhr. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu also, he died at the age of 63. Umar Ibn Khattab also died at the age of 63. Allahu Akbar. And some of the scholars mention that, look, they followed the Prophet ﷺ in their life and in their death. Subhanallah. And that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. So, and there's some reports which we have that he says, nothing else matters to me. All that has happened, if I could just be, the fact that she accepted, she says, Alhamdulillah, that I'll be buried next to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And that was from the most beloved things to him. So when Abdullah ibn Umar came back and gave him the good news that Aisha accepted, he said, all praise is due to Allah. There was nothing more important to me than this. No, there was nothing more important to me than this. Likewise, the people said, after that they heard, or his daughter came, Hafsa, radiallahu anha, she came to Umar radiallahu anha, she started to cry, the mother of the believers. Of course, seeing her father in that state, in pain, in difficulty. She went in to Umar radiallahu anha's presence and she wept for some time. And he, radiallahu anhu, did not want anyone to weep in his presence over him. And he said, don't weep. In fact, he was the one that narrated the hadith, that those who weep over the dead, the deceased, and the meaning behind it, if they don't advise their loved ones, or they don't advise those around them, their relatives, to not weep from them, there is a punishment for them. So, don't weep. Of course, you're going to weep. Tears will flow. But don't weep to the extent where it becomes excessive. Because the excessive weeping is the weeping of the people of Jahiliyyah. They would hit their cheeks and they would rip their clothes out of Jahiliyyah. But rather, the Messenger ﷺ, yes, he did shed tears. And he says, إِنَّ الْعَيْنَ تَدْمَعُ وَإِنَّ الْقَلْبَ لَيَحْزَنُ وَمَا نَقُولُ إِلَّا مَا يُرْضِي اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ إِنَّ لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّ إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. And so Umar did not want the excessive of weeping to occur. For he's the one who narrated that narration from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they said to him, O chief of believers, appoint a successor. Umar said, I do not find anyone more suitable for that job than the following persons whom the Messenger has already appointed as being the best of the Sahaba in his lifetime. Who did he mention? And he mentioned those names. Ali radiallahu anhu, and Uthman radiallahu anhu, and Zubayr radiallahu anhu, and Talha radiallahu anhu, and Sa'd radiallahu anhu, Abdurrahman ibn Auf. And said that Abdullah ibn Umar will be a witness to you. You see, he didn't mention his own son. He said that Abdullah ibn Umar will be a witness to you. But he will have no share in the rule, he says. His being a witness will compensate him for not sharing the right of ruling. If Sa'd becomes the ruler, it will be all right. Otherwise, whoever becomes the ruler should seek his help, as I have not dismissed him because of incompetence or dishonesty. Umar added, I recommend that my successor takes care of the... Then he started giving advice, that my successor takes care. أوصي الخليفة من بعد بالمهاجرين. Why did he start with the muhajirin? Because they're the best of the companions. Allah mentioned them first. وَالسَّابِقُونَ الْأَوَّلُونَ من المهاجرين والأنصار والذين تبعهم بإحسان رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه. Allah is pleased with them and them pleased with him. So he said, I advise you concerning the muhajirin, take care of the awwaleen. Take care of the early ones. Those who have preceded you. Those who came before you, take care of them. And يعرف لهم حقهم, that you know their rights. ويحفظ لهم حرمتهم, and they protect their honor. وأوصيه بالأنصار, and I advise the successor who comes after me with the Ansar, the helpers of Medina, خيرا الذين تبوأوا الدار والإيمان, those who resided in Medina, which was called Dar wal-Iman, the abode of Iman, من قبلهم أن يقبل من محسنهم, that they accept the righteous or the good doers of them and excuse their wrongdoers. وأن يعفى عن مسيئهم وأوصيه بأهل الأمصار خيرا, and I recommend that they should be good to the people in the towns, those who come. فإنهم ردء الإسلام وجبات المال وغيظ العدو. يعني the towns around Medina, advise you regarding them, the inhabitants, as they are the protectors of Islam and the source of wealth and the source of annoyance to the enemy. And also I recommend that nothing be taken from them except from the surplus with their consent. I also recommend that he be good to the Arab Bedouins, as they are the origin of the Arabs and material of Islam. He should take care, he should take from what is inferior amongst their properties and distribute that to the poor amongst them, because many of them were poor, coming from the villages or from far away, as Bedouins, not having much. So he said, I advise you also regarding them. I also recommend him concerning Allah and His messengers protectees, the dhimmis, the mu'ahideen, the non-Muslims who live amongst the Muslims, to fulfill their contracts and to fight for them and not to overburden them with what is beyond their ability. So when Umar radiallahu anhu passed away, we carried him out and set out walking. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu greeted Aisha and he told her what Umar radiallahu anhu said. In fact, before he passed away, rather she said, bring him in. He was brought in and buried beside his two companions. And also there's the report that Aisha radiallahu anha, this was her home. This is her household. And yet, whenever she goes in there, she goes, I cover. She covers. Even after the death of Umar radiallahu anhu, out of respect. So when he was buried, the group recommended by Umar radiallahu anhu held a meeting. Then Abdurrahman ibn Auf said, radiallahu anhu, reduce the candidates for rulership to 3 of you. Zubair said, I will give up the right to Ali. Radiallahu anhu. Talha said, I will give up the right to Uthman. Radiallahu anhu. Sa'ad said, I will give up the right to Abdurrahman ibn Auf. Radiallahu anhu. Abdurrahman ibn Auf said to Uthman and Ali, now which of you is willing to give up his right of candidacy so that he may choose the better of the two? And in the end, Uthman radiallahu anhu was chosen to be the caliph after Umar Ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu. So just some of the narrations regarding Umar radiallahu anhu. In that narration, in this story that we just read, where he'd mentioned there's no good upon a person's Islam if he discards the prayer. This shows you the importance of the prayer, Ya Abdullah. La khayra fi islami man taraka as-salah. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى وقوموا لله قانتين. Guard the prayers, especially the middle prayer, and stand up to Allah. Qaniteen, continuous in your worship, prolonging your worship. Don't be those who peck in their prayer just to get it over and done with. The salah, the Messenger ﷺ said, جُعِلَتْ قُرَّةُ عَيْنِي فِي الصَّلَاةِ. The coolness of my eyes is in the prayer. He loved the prayer, enjoyed the prayer, Abdullah. And this is what we saw with the ulama, that when they stand in the prayer, they would rush to be in the first row. The likes of Sheikh Rabi' bin Hadi, the likes of Sheikh Ubaid al-Jabiri, which we saw rushing, not rushing as in speeding, no, just making concern the first row. And they would go to the first row and they would wait there for the prayer, because they know whilst they're waiting for the prayer, the angels are supplicating for them. And they are in the prayer until they are in the prayer even before the prayer, so long as they are waiting for it. And I asked Sheikh Muhammad Abdulilah Marzuq al-Banna rahimahullah, who was always in the first row in his masjid. He built a masjid on his land in Jeddah. He has his house, and next to his house he has a piece of land. He built a masjid there, and he called Masjid al-Sunnah al-Muhammadiyah. Rahimahullah, and rahimahullah Shaykh Ubaid. And in this masjid, he should take care of it. There was no i'lan, no posters of any lectures belonging to any innovators. He disliked anyone to come and give a lecture unless he was known to be Salafi, and he was known to be a person of Sunnah. And he said, this is to take care of this masjid. He was very concerned about his masjid. Who's going to be the imam of the masjid? Who's going to give the adhan of the masjid? Taking concern. Who's going to give durus in the masjid? And he was concerned for his students. And there were many people in his sittings, 10, 12, 15 people. But he continued the durus. When he would teach 4 days a week in his masjid. 4 days a week teaching Umdat al-Ahkam. Every morning after Fajr teaching Tafsir Ibn Kathir. And on Monday after Maghrib he will be teaching Mukhtasar Sahih Muslim. These are the Ahl Hadith. These are the people of hadith who love hadith and his people. They love hadith and his people. And every time we ask him, he says, go to the scholars. Go to Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, rahimahullah. He is a allama fil fiqh. He is the shafi of this ummah. Go to Shaykh Rabi' ibn Hadi. He is the Yahya ibn Ma'in of this ummah. He said, my neighbor used to be Shaykh al-Albani, rahimahullah, in Medina. It was the golden years, 1381, when Jami' Islamiyah was open. 1381, 1382, 1383. The golden years, he said, when the great scholars were alive at that time. But they concerned themselves with the salah. That is what you'll see. حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى وقوموا لله قانتين. Enjoying the prayer. Shaykh Muhammad rahimahullah, when he became so old, Shaykh Muhammad al-Banna rahimahullah became old, he found it difficult to go down the stairs. Whatever money he had, he built a lift to be able to go down the stairs to reach the masjid. That is the importance, Ya Abdullah. And when he came close to his life, he sold his house. He had an apartment in the outskirts of Mecca. He sold it in order to have a smaller apartment next to the Haram, in order to pray 5 times a day in Masjid al-Haram. And I said to the Sheikh, I always see you, and I always see you Friday before Maghrib, the last hour on a Friday when you make supplication, Allah will answer it. When you supplicate to Allah, Allah will answer it. I said, Sheikh, why before Maghrib you saying this dua? See, you saying the dua. He said, because when you are waiting for the prayer, it is as if you're in the prayer. It's as if in your prayer. So, inna salata kanat ala al-mu'minina kitaban mawquta. Indeed, the prayer is prescribed on time. The first thing the person will be asked about on the Day of Judgment is his prayer. If it is rectified, then he has been successful and is victorious. وَإِنْ فَاسَدَتْ فَقَدْ خَابَ وَخَسِرْ. And if his prayer is wanting and in need, and is in loss. And that hadith, is in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, which is sahih. Praying, Ya Abdullah, is one of the greatest acts that you can do to get closer to Allah.